This is the Citroen E-C4, the electrified version of the C4. Let me give you the headlines. It's about the size of a Ford Focus. It's got a 217-mile range, enough space for all the family, and this is the big one. An electric motor that makes 855 horsepower. No, I lied about that last one. That one's not true. Sorry, I made that up. Yeah, I might have made that last bit up to make it seem a bit more exciting, because excitement isn't really what the C4 is all about. Cast your mind back to the previous generation of C4. Can't remember it, can you? Neither can I. Honestly, it was the kind of car that was so forgettable. You could take it to a shopping center, park it up, and that would be the last you'd ever see of it, because when you got back, you'd forget what the bloody thing looks like. But for this generation, it's as if the designers have said, come on lads and ladettes, whatever the French for that is, let's make this thing memorable. Let's make it mental.
The styling, especially at the front, is pretty wild, with tiny LEDs up top, huge main beams that resemble those you find on a Porsche, a tiny grille and huge fog lights, all in seemingly crazy proportions. At the side, it has some pretty complex surfacing, textures and shapes, some of the busiest alloys you'll ever find, 18s in this case, and a roofline that slopes down quite unexpectedly, like a coupe.
The whole thing is eccentric, wacky, and very French. And actually, I like it, but that's not what this car is all about. This car is all about the comfort. So let's put the E-C4 into some context. It's an SUV come hatchback, isn't everything these days. It's about the size of a Hyundai Kona or a Nissan Leaf. It's available as a petrol, a diesel, or an electric, and all models are geared towards the same thing, being comfortable and easy to live with. It's lovely and quiet in here, and the seats are super comfortable. They're called advanced comfort seats, and they have 15 mils of padding to give you just the perfect amount of comfort with the right amount of support. I like these. The next thing you notice is the steering is just super light. I don't know how many of you have ever driven a Rolls Royce before, but let me tell you, this feels like the steering system you get in a Rolls Royce. You can drive this car with your fingers. As a matter of fact, let me try and do a 3-point turn using just my little finger. So whack that in, put it in reverse. The gear selector switch is a little bit temperamental actually, so you have to press it a few times to make sure that it's in gear, otherwise you can end up not going in the right direction. But look at this. This is all pinky right here. All pinky all day long. Bob is your uncle. The steering, so light. It's mad. And then there's a suspension. Citroen use a system called progressive hydraulic cushion, which basically means it uses springs and dampers, but at the ends of the springs and dampers, you find cushions. So it's like having a cushion on top of a cushion. And that means that when you go over a deep pothole, instead of crashing against the stops, it crashes against the cushions. And the whole thing is just lovely, and it flows so nicely. Most electric cars tend to be a little bit more firmly sprung than their ICE counterparts because they're a bit heavier and they need a bit more support, but this thing just flows. It's lovely. In fact, on Citroen's YouTube channel, they have an animation that shows that you can ride around with a cup of coffee in the cup holder and the coffee won't spill.
But that's the theory. Can it actually do that in reality though?
Right, placing the coffee in the cup holder, and should I launch it? I'm gonna launch it. Flat to the floor. That is flat, completely flat, not even moving. Oh my God. It's not moving. Oh my deck. Normally you get like a lot of squat, and when you get on the brakes you get pitching. Not even a hint of it. Right, we're approaching a reasonably bumpy road right now, so you might see that vibrate a little bit in the camera. Honestly, that is, I expected it to go. I kid you not, I have a cloth in the back of this car to wipe up any excess coffee. That is completely redundant. The suspension in this car is just Rolls Royce. It's the Rolls Royce of hatchbacks. I'm gonna leave that there for the rest of the review, I promise you. The only real downside with the suspension system is that this car does have a fair amount of body roll. Right, here we go, approaching a right-hander a bit too fast, and as you go in, it does lean into the bends. It's not terrifying like on some cars, but it is noticeable. It feels slightly top heavy. Apparently there's less body roll in this car than in the petrol versions because it does have batteries mounted low down in the car. If that's the case, I dread to think how wobbly the petrol ones must feel, because it's not a sports car, is it? You're probably not going to be driving the E-C4 enthusiastically, but let's say you do, like I am right now, then it's not actually as disappointing as you might think. It's got a 135 horsepower motor mounted on the front axle, and that's good for 0 to 62 in 9.7 seconds. It's got 250 Newton meters of torque. That's enough grunt to facilitate the odd overtaking maneuver. It's not completely gutless, this car, and it's got a fair amount of grip through the corners. You can, if you want to, for some strange reason, hustle the E-C4. But let's face it, this car isn't about flying along the road. It's about slowing things down, taking it easy.
If you're buying the E-C4 as a family car, then you'll be pretty pleased with the amount of room inside. There's ample headroom, and despite the annoying transmission tunnel, legroom is pretty decent, plus you get a pair of USB ports. The boot, meanwhile, is a very ample 380 litres with an adjustable height floor, an underfloor compartment for keeping cables out of sight, and a dedicated bag for your charging cables.
Up front, things get even more clever. There's a lot going on up here that I think you guys will really appreciate. Some highlights for me: this car comes with a wireless charging mat where you can place your phone nice and easily. It also comes with a little LED indicator to let you know when your phone is charging. So many cars don't have that. Plus you get USB Type A and USB Type C, and they're not hidden away, they're in plain sight. Plus you get a little storage area down here with a hidden compartment underneath to stash your Haribo away from prying eyes. There's something else that passengers will really appreciate as well. This car comes with a little storage tray for an iPad, and you don't even have to hold your iPad to look at it, because there's also a dedicated mount where you can easily, not that easily, position the iPad and watch it on the move. Really, really nice touch. You also get a volume knob, a dedicated volume knob, but it's not all perfect on the infotainment system front, because that screen is a little too small for my liking and a little bit too high resolution. And that means, I mean, it sounds weird, but it means that a lot of the text is a little bit too tiny to see, especially when you're on the move. But you do get nice, simple to read instruments and even a head-up display. The Citroen E-C4 has a 50 kilowatt-hour battery pack, and in the brochure they tell you that it's good for a range of 217 miles. But of course, the reality is always a bit different. I've been living with this car for a week now, and I've never achieved 217 miles. During normal driving, I average around 3 miles per kilowatt hour. 3 times 50 equals 150, which is typically what you can expect from this car. I can, if I drive a bit like a nun, stretch that out to 3.8 miles per kilowatt hour. 3.8 times 50 works out to be around 190. So somewhere between 150 and just under 200 miles if you try it really hard. What's really important though is that the E-C4 is compatible with 100 kilowatt rapid charging, which means you can go from 0 to 80% battery power in 30 minutes from a 100 kilowatt charger. When you're charging at home from a 7 kilowatt wall box, like most people will, then it will take around 7.5 hours to charge overnight, which is how most people will end up charging this car. Quick coffee check, still there, still there.
In terms of value, the E-C4 is priced pretty competitively for an EV in this segment at around £33,000, and the running costs will be quite cheap, so it could make good financial sense in the long run. But there is no getting away from the fact that it commands a £10,000 premium on the cheapest manual petrol non-electric C4.
Ultimately, I think the E-C4 is a really good family car. I'm a bit gutted it doesn't have 850 horsepower like I said at the beginning, but apart from that, it's really neat. This car's strength is in the fact that it's super comfortable, super easy to get on with, and has lots of nice, smart little touches that help it stand out from the crowd. If you're looking for a compact electric family car, you could do a hell of a lot worse than pick up an E-C4.